Welcome, one and all, to the first ever live episode of PACIFIC414 episode reviews. I am your host, Mike, and tonight, I'm not just going to be reviewing one episode of Star Trek Discovery. I'll be reviewing 2 episodes of Star Trek Discovery. Why? Because honestly, I don't want to sit through these episodes yet again, so instead of uploading 2 separate videos, I thought I would go ahead and give you a live stream where I react to both episodes. So, as you can see here, before I bring myself back, and sorry about that glitch, I'm a one-man show. Go, that should fix it. Oops. My bad. Like I said, one-man show here. I will fix this. I promise you. There we go. Yeah, like I said, one-man show errors are bound to happen. Anyways, there I am again. Sorry about that glitch. Only have myself to blame. But anyways, tonight I'm going to be talking about not 1, but 2 episodes of Star Trek Discovery. And those 2 episodes are the season premiere of Star Trek Discovery for Season 3, That Hope Is You, and its second episode, Far From Home. So first off, and That Hope Is You, there's a recap to the second season finale where you had a whole bunch of action going on. You couldn't tell who was fighting whom for a while, and the Discovery crew and Michael Burnham are trying to get the computer system that they encountered during season 2 away from current time, current 23rd century. So that computer system was called Control, and they were trying to get it out of reach. So their solution was to build their own Red Angel suit and go to the future. And of course, going with them is Emperor Jojo, a character who, love her or hate her, she's part of this series. Now part of this particular incarnation of Star Trek. So anyways, long story short, Captain Pike and the Enterprise helped Discovery fend off Control, and then Discovery, behind Michael Burnham in the Red Angel suit, go into a time wormhole into the distant future. About 900 plus years into that distant future, so when we finally catch up to Commander Michael Burnham, well, she's coming out of the wormhole, and she is in the year 3188. We see a starship being chased by another ship. It's being shot at. I could have sworn watching this scene I was watching Star Wars and not Star Trek, just the way it was. And I don't know, watching so many years of Star Trek, and I know I probably should have done this before I jumped right into the episode review, but oh well. I've got a long history with Star Trek, starting with the original series, going on to the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. And I can tell you my favorite episode of the original series was Tomorrow Is Yesterday, where the Enterprise crew is thrown back into 1960s Earth, and they encounter an Air Force pilot, and that Air Force pilot is, amazed by the technology, of course, and, they, being the crew of the Enterprise, try to, keep as much of the future away from him as possible, but of course it fails. Long story short, everything is settled at the end. The Enterprise does return to the 23rd century, and all is as it should be. And of course, Next Generation, my favorite episode, the episode that got me hooked onto Next Generation, even though I had seen bits and pieces of Next Gen when I was in the 3rd grade, when it first started. It was Yesterday's Enterprise. And a lot of fans know of Yesterday's Enterprise. It's where the Enterprise C comes through a rift in time and comes to the future, alters the future because it wasn't there to save the Klingons from an attack by the Romulans at Kittimer. So, moving on to Deep Space Nine. I watched Deep Space Nine from the very beginning, all the way from Emissary to What We Leave Behind. And I can say the only thing that bugged me about it really was Riki Diki runabouts, as I called them as my 14-year-old, almost 15-year-old self. And to be honest, little did I know how much that show would not only become my favorite Star Trek, but the ship that it would eventually get would become one of my favorite ships because of the situation that Sisko and crew found themselves in during the, season 3 all the way to season 7 with the Dominion. And then, of course, there is Voyager. Voyager was presented to fans at many conventions as Star Trek's Lost in Space. And there are some good episodes of Voyager, and then there are some episodes I don't care to watch again. And one of my favorite episodes was The Year of Hell. And I mean, some of you watch that 70s show, you know that Red Foreman, versatile actor Kurtwood Smith, who was also in RoboCop, was also in the episode Year of Hell. And tell you what, every time I saw him go to, a console, especially at the end, I expected to hear him say, "Hit that button, dumbass." But anyways, I digress. And then there's Enterprise. Enterprise, some call DS9 the black sheep of the family. Me, I think Enterprise is the redheaded stepchild of the family. Because it was a prequel series, and I'm not very fond of prequel series, just to let you know, so that'll also help you with my review of these 2 episodes, knowing that I'm not really a big fan of going back where we've already been. I'm all about, in Star Trek, moving forward. And that's what you could say Discovery has done. What many have said Discovery should have done in the beginning, because the ship in general looked too advanced and too large for a ship of the 23rd century. And, as far as characters are concerned, I'll be honest, there are only maybe a couple of crewmen I can actually name, because we haven't really been given your usual backstory of the bridge officers on board the Starship Discovery. And we know that Michael Burnham was a mutineer on her previous ship on the Shinzo, and she disobeyed a direct order, and I don't know. With Discovery, I've been finding it very hard to actually like the series. And the reason why I'm doing these reviews is because I'm hoping beyond hope, but then I'm a Cub fan, that maybe there's going to be an episode where I go, that was good. I don't want to say that was alright. I want to be able to say that was good. And, for any of you who like Discovery, fine. But there are things about Discovery, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the ship looks too far advanced for a ship, of its size, and also the Klingons. You know what I thought of the Klingons when I first saw them? And anybody who's my age will probably remember the advertisements for California raisins. And it was claymation and, saying how good raisins are for you and everything like that. Well, that's what the Klingons of Discovery remind me of. The Klingon raisins. They're not California raisins, they're Klingon raisins. And with the way they spoke Klingon, it sounded like they had a load of marbles in their mouth. It's like, you got a hairball? You got a problem, buddy? You need somebody to do the Heimlich? Because you sound like you're choking. I mean, the Klingons didn't look right, and I know. I've seen many a video for people that are pro-Discovery, people that are anti-Discovery, and, it's been said many times, even before, Klingons may look different in other regions. After all, they're always trying to explain why the Klingons from the original series look so different from the Klingons that we first saw in the motion picture all the way up till Enterprise. But anyways, back to That Hope Is You. We see Michael Burnham come out of the time wormhole, and with the two ships that are chasing each other, Commander Burnham collides with the first ship that we see that's being attacked, and she's out of control. She's saying, activate automatic landing shields, activate emergency thrusters, yelling and screaming because she's panicking, and she's making a rapid descent down to the planet below. And as far as we know of the other ship, it's also making its descent to the planet, and it's a rapid descent. Although, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I find it hard to believe that, someone the size of Michael Burnham colliding into a ship would even affect it. I mean, if that ship had even, 5% shields, that should have protected it. But anyways, Michael Burnham crashes, creates a big crater in Iceland, because that's where this particular episode was filmed. Actually, most of the season was filmed, except for a few episodes up in Iceland. And, she gets up and aches and pains, moaning and groaning, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I realized she had impact shields, though, so that would have, protected her from some of the impact, but still, you'd be sore. You'd be sore as hell after an impact like that. And she gets up, and of course immediately she wants to ascertain if there's any life on the planet, and when she asks the computer, are there life signs, and the computer says yes, there are life signs, she yells and screams and just just jubilant joy knowing that there's life signs where she's at. And then she is informed by the computer that the wormhole is destabilizing, and she knows she has to send the Red Angel suit back through the wormhole so it can send a message to Spock, because in the season 2 finale, she told Spock to look to the stars for a message from her, knowing that she got to the future safely. So anyways, the Red Angel suit takes off. It enters the wormhole. Michael Burnham takes out a kit from her backpack. It's got some rations. It's got a phaser. It's got her Starfleet Delta with her rank on it. And she starts walking about. And, in this episode, we're also introduced to the character of Cleveland Booker. And Cleveland Booker was the pilot of the starship that Michael Burnham crashed into. And of course, by the time Michael Burnham and Booker, finally meet up, Booker's ticked off because he sees her looking at his ship, and his ship has precious cargo because he's a freighter captain. He's, trades goods, and stuff like that. And, he's pissed thinking that she's coming to take his cargo, take his livelihood. And, she starts to introduce himself. He wants no part of her because he's the reason why why he crashed. And of course, they get into, a little bit of fight. And I was watching the fight thinking, okay, he's a few times bigger than her, and she's basically making him look like a wimp. Obviously, he knows no self-defense, and obviously that Starfleet training is damn good training. After all, if you're a Starfleet officer, you need to know how to get yourself out of any situation when diplomacy just won't work. And, long story short, she and Booker, make amends, and, they agree to let bygones be bygones, and, Booker gets her backstory that, she has some Starfleet equipment that the people in the future who are nostalgic for old things, especially from particular eras, might want to have, and since Booker's a courier, he can use it to barter and get whatever he needs. And what he needs is dilithium. And the reason why he needs dilithium is because there was a Big Bang. And I'm not talking about the Big Bang Theory. There was no Sheldon in this episode. He's talking about a day the galaxy took a hard left. I'm sure many of you have seen it in the promos for Season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, but there was a large explosion. All the dilithium in the galaxy just exploded. Just blew up. Now, how that happened, will we ever find out? Who knows? And here's the Trekkie in me, here's the Star Trek fan in me going, okay, so we're 900 years in the future. 900 years, give or take. And are you telling me that Starfleet, an organization built on exploring the galaxy and built on science, hasn't developed an alternative to dilithium when it comes to the antimatter flow in a warp engine? I mean, I don't get it, because also another thing I skipped, and I'm sorry for skipping it, but even before we meet Booker, we're given an overall view of this planet, and it's all in shambles. But at this one planet is one person, and he's got this box. Everything that he has is holographic, pretty much. And in this box, we find out later what it is, and I'll tell you later. But it has something to do with the Federation. And, anyways, back to my previous thought, 900 plus years, and the Federation hasn't developed another means to power, or at least give some kind of transmission fluid reaction to the warp core. I mean, they mention, quantum slipstream drive, and Booker saying that he's not able to navigate it. Oh, come on. You mean to tell me, again, in 800 years, if we go by the time of Voyager, in 800 years, that Starfleet or somebody who has gained knowledge of the quantum slipstream drive hasn't been able to not only develop it, but make it energy efficient and also easy to navigate, just like warp drive by the 23rd century, 24th century, and so on, is easy to navigate? I don't buy it. And if you think I'm hating on this series, fine. But there's one thing you need to know when you watch any of my videos on this channel. It doesn't matter if it's the box score. It doesn't matter if it's the box score mountain visit, Pacific 414 episode review, Pacific 414 movie review, a game stream, or anything else that's put on this channel. One, it's not for kids, because I could throw out a bomb at any moment. And two, I'm going to give my thoughts, my opinion. You don't like it? Fine. You want to have a discussion in the comments? Let's have a discussion. Let's be civil and have a discussion. Because we can agree, we can disagree, we may, say you're wrong, and that's fine, but let's create some kind of civil dialogue. But back to my previous slide, you mean to tell me that in this period of time, the 31st century, that there is absolutely no one in the galaxy who has an alternative to dilithium to help regulate the matter-antimatter? That nobody, looked at what powered quantum slipstream drive, looked into the Borg transwarp network, or even Borg transwarp drive technology, or even, by the time of Nemesis, we're led to believe that things between the Federation and Romulans are improving until we get to Picard, where it seems like anything that was improving, we're throwing that away. And, the Federation wouldn't have been on good terms with the Romulans and maybe shared information. The Romulans have an artificial singularity that helps give them power and gives them the ability to go to warp. You mean to tell me that things in 900 years didn't progress to the point where dilithium is no longer needed? I mean, yeah, I get it. We still depend on oil today, but, who's to say that we're going to still depend on oil, 150 to 200 years from now? Who knows? Who knows what kind of energy sources will be developed and they'll be able to replace, the reliance on fossil fuels. But anyways, Booker says that he can't regenerate dilithium. He can't even believe that Mikey Spock, as some people call her, and I'm not going to be shy about it either. I'm going to call her Mikey Spock too. And I'm not just doing it because other people are doing it. It's just that, I have watched the first 2 seasons of the show and I'm not impressed. And it's nothing against Sonequa Martin Green or any of the cast. I'm just not impressed with any of the writing on the show. I blame it all on the writers. But Booker tells Mikey Spock that, when she crashed into his ship, he basically destroyed his warp regeneration capabilities as far as the dilithium's concerned. So he's got to barter to get more dilithium since it's at a premium. It's scarce. And he agrees to take her along. We finally get to the area where he was headed. And we meet an Orion and an Andorian. So again, in 900 years, Orions being Orions, Andorians obviously aren't part of the Federation anymore because of the boom, which fractured the Federation because, nobody considered, developing an alternative method to get through the galaxy, get through the Alpha and Beta quadrants. Heck, Voyager had an episode, and it was even brought up in Picard, of a race that had a transporter system that could transport somebody 40,000 light years. You mean to tell me that with all that information Voyager brought back from the Delta Quadrant that nobody even thought of developing a transporter system like that. And don't give me that transwarp beaming from Star Trek 2009. No. If it wasn't mentioned and anything after the original series, and that includes Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, then it didn't exist as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, they again get to this area where you have the Andorian and the Orion, and of course they're questioning Booker. They're wanting to know why Burnham's there, and long story short, Booker double crosses Mikey Burnham, and Mikey Burnham, because of what she's carrying, and which are things that were in her kit, she's considered a risk, and she's tied up by these electrical ties. And of course, there's this droid that sounds like a robot, and you mean to tell me again, in 900 plus years, we still have robots that talk like this? You may not go. You may not go. Oh, come on. So, what we get here is Mikey Spock is being interrogated. She gets sprayed with a drug. She starts laughing, hallucinating. She's basically high. And, I guess the next time I watch this show, I need to be drinking or doing something in order to get some enjoyment out of this, because I swear with, the way they have these characters act, and I know she was under the influence, but the characters are speaking like we speak today, and they only regressed, they haven't progressed, and, Mikey Spock, starts laughing and, basically saying, she's out of time, and, they're asking, where are you from? And of course, we catch up with Booker because the alien was chasing him in the beginning, and it's caught up to him, and he wants things that Book stole, and of course, Book saying it wasn't stolen, he's taking it back home. And of course, chase ensues after Mikey Spock and Book are reunited, and they transport out of the station. And I know I'm going all over the place with this. Just bear with it. But, they transport, they're beamed away, and of course, Book says that, they'll track him down sooner or later. And of course, they are tracked down. Heck, one of the people pursuing him is Morn. Well, maybe not Morn from Deep Space Nine, but a member of his species. I believe they were called Lysians or Lucarians. Anyways, we see not Morn and fellow Orions and part of the Orion Syndicate. I mean, I guess they're part of the Orion Syndicate. Hell if I know that. But, they're chasing them, they're shooting them, and of course, Book and Mikey Spock transport, and at one point, Book pushes Mikey Spock off a cliff, and, they transport, and their last transported destination is in the water, and, Book and Mikey Spock have one last fight. Of course, you see that during the firefight, Mikey Spock is grazed by one of the beams of the weapons. I don't know if they're disruptors, I don't know if they're phasers, I don't know if they're high-powered lasers. But she gets grazed. And, of course, Book has these magical healing abilities. Yeah, I'd like to know what species that was met that had those abilities and gave them to Book, because that'd be handy. You're standing on the shore where Mikey Spock and Book were standing, and he's able to create this healing plant that he puts on Mikey Spock's wound, and she's healed and A-OK. Long story short, and that hope is you. Book finally does agree to take Mikey Spock to someone that can help her. And we meet back with the gentleman we saw previously, because that's where Book takes Mikey Spock. And Mikey Spock and the gentleman in Book, talk, and, Mikey Spock identifies herself as being Commander Michael Burnham, Starfleet, USS Discovery, science officer, and this gentleman who's basically been the administrator of this particular area, and the administrator for Starfleet says, "Welcome, Michael Burnham," and he says that for 40 years he's been waiting for somebody to come, and he also mentions after Mikey Spock asked him to scan for Discovery that there are only 2 ships within range, and none of them are Discovery. But, you mean to tell me this guy who was told by his father about Starfleet, because he was supposedly a Starfleet officer, that for 40 years he just stayed there in that office just waiting for a Starfleet officer to come instead of trying to find a way for Starfleet officers to come, even with long-range sensors being offline? I don't know, but another thing that got me on this episode was the fact that he, said he had to wait for a commissioned officer to raise the flag. You mean to tell me that your father, who was an officer in Starfleet, couldn't have sworn you in? And, giving you that ability to raise the flag of the United Federation of Planets, because that's the flag that was inside that little tiny box, was the flag of the United Federation of Planets, missing several stars. But anyways, long story short, Mikey Spock wants to, contact Discovery, and they're going to find a way to help Mikey Spock contact Discovery, which leads us to Far From Home. Funny, I remember watching a Far From Home. It had something to do with Spider-Man. But anyways, in Far From Home, we meet up with Discovery, and it's on a collision course to a planet that has ice. Huh. Where have I seen that before? No. Yeah, it couldn't have been in a previous Star Trek series, could it? Could it have been in a previous Star Trek series? Which one would that have been? Dun 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 dun. Could there have been an alternate future that had a captain of a USS Challenger being Captain Geordi LaForge? Ah, yes. Voyager's 100th episode. Timeless. That's right. Long story short, we see Discovery on the collision course for this planet. It's all fucked up, and it's about to burn up in the planet's atmosphere, so they decide to do a roll onto what they call the top shields. Kurtzman, writers, if you're listening, I know I'm a small YouTuber, but I'm also a big Star Trek fan. Just so you know, those top shields are called dorsal shields. The term that your helmsman should have used was, we can roll Discovery onto the dorsal shields, since they're still powered. Anyways, after Discovery uses its pizza cutter sausage section, because that's what the damn thing looks like, and it bursts through an asteroid, it makes a crash landing onto this ice planet. And like I said, where have I seen that before? The only thing you're missing is Voyager, Delta Flyer, and Quantum Slipstream Drive. Oh my. So, Discovery crashes. It's really fucked up now. And, everybody slowly comes to, and Saru asks for a damage report, and he asks the helmsman if she's okay. And of course, how could she be okay? Obviously, that impact, she fell from her station, hit her head, and now she's got a concussion. She had her bell run. Then tactical officer looks at her, sees that she's bleeding from the side, from the side where she's got her Borg implant or some kind of implant, and says that she needs to get to sick bay. So, she goes to sick bay, and I'm sorry for not knowing too many of the main characters, but that's the writer's fault for not giving us enough of the main characters on the bridge in the very beginning. So, Saru asks for a damage report, and he starts assigning things. We got Janet Reno, making wisecracks, not acting like a Starfleet officer at all. And, they all decide to start doing, ship by ship repairs. And of course, you got Giorgio, and she's from the mirror universe, so she's got her own ulterior motive as always. The character really brings nothing to the series, which is a shame, because Michelle Yeoh, from what I've seen, is a much better actress, especially when she has much better material to work with, other than the crap that she's been given on Star Trek Discovery. And, they start going through the ship. You saw, one crewman repairing one part of the corridor. You see, one crewman taking out part of the communication system and saying that it's damaged, it needs to be repaired. And of course, Georgiou being disrespectful because, hey, she's from the mirror universe. Let's just say that, it's disrespectful to still have her in any form of Star Trek other than keeping her in the mirror universe. Because again, the character absolutely, positively brings nothing to this series. And like I said, Michelle Yeoh, great actress, but the material she's given on this show sucks. But long story short, they, go through. You got Ensign Tilly there too, and of course, she and Saru eventually decide that because this planet has the resource that they need, they're gonna go out and get this resource, but they need to have the ship's doctor inoculate them so they can breathe in the planet's atmosphere. I'm thinking, instead of wasting time going to sickbay and getting inoculated, why did you get an environmental suit? Oh, but anyways, they go out on their adventure to get this material they need. And we get to sickbay, and you see the doctor, and you see an unconscious Stamets because he got injured at the end of the season 2 finale, and Dr. Culver, or whatever the doctor's name is, one of these days I'll pay attention enough to actually give a shit. But anyways, he tells him, I need this bio bed for people that are injured more than you are. And, Of course, Stamets starts talking about the EPS conduits. People are going to need his help to get the ship back online. And of course, the doctor says not until you go through a few treatments. Long story short, the doctor puts Stamets through these treatments. And Stamets is with Jet Reno. And they're in engineering. And of course, they're having to access a Jeffries tube in order to repair a few of the damaged systems. Meanwhile, Saru and Tilly wind up in the saloon. I swear I was watching a Western. I have nothing against Westerns. One of my favorite Westerns is Tombstone. Another is Unforgiven. But anyways, they walk into the saloon, and of course, you have these three guys, and everybody's on edge because of what's going on in the galaxy around them. And it's basically falling apart since the Federation can't be there as a peacekeeping force. And of course, they're questioning who they are. Through, does the diplomatic thing, introduces themselves, tries not to give them too much information, but eventually does tell them they're from Starfleet. And, the one in the middle, his name escapes me, but he's all, "You're from Starfleet? I've heard so much about Starfleet, how you guys always want to help." And, Saru says, "Well, we need help repairing our communications equipment so we can contact a crew member," because everybody is concerned about Michael Burnham. Because what I didn't touch up on, and again, like I've said, and I'm going to continue to say, I'm probably going to be going all over the place in these reviews. But, before Tilly and Saru went out on their mission, there was a meeting between Georgiou and Tilly and Saru. Of course, Georgiou wants to do her own thing. After all, this is a woman who earlier in the episode stepped on the villain from the last season finale of season 2 and basically stomped him. You had guts and everything, which you see when Jet Reno and Stamets are talking, and she even calls the guy, the cleanup crew, cleaning up aisle 5. It's like, okay, first of all, with food processors that they have in the 23rd century, there would be no need to go to a grocery store. We don't even know that grocery stores even exist in the 23rd century. We know they probably don't exist in the 24th century with everybody, except for Picard's brother, wanting a food replicator. But anyways, long story short, Saru and these three guys, along with Tilly, talk, and then three other mustache twirling bad guys come in. Not only does this bar look like it's supposed to be a saloon from an old Western, even this guy who shows up acts like your typical early old Western villain. And, he says, "I'll get a gun." Yeah, well, whoop-de-doo. So does everyone else. You think that makes you special? And, your gun even has a light on the front of it. So is that supposed to tell the effects people, okay, this is where it shoots out? Because, what ends up happening? He takes this gun, he shoots the one guy who's being nice to Saru and Tilly and offered help and even repaired their system that needed to be repaired. He kills him. I mean, the amount of blood and guts and death that's in this series, you would never have seen in any other previous Star Trek series. This is the most family-friendly series there is. And I know I'm cursing, ranting, and raving in this review, but when I watch Star Trek, I want to see actual Star Trek. I want to see Star Trek that gives me hope and thinking, maybe not now, but maybe someday we will reach a level of tolerance and understanding that was depicted in previous incarnations of Star Trek. Because we're not seeing it from this or any other Kurtzman incarnation of Star Trek. So, long story short, the one guy who was being nice gets killed. The guy and his two henchmen, think they're all big and bad. And of course, all of a sudden, Georgiou shows up, and of course, our mustache twirling villain, even hits her with the weapon, but, he says he's going to make it slow and painful. And the only thing that's slow and painful is watching the rest of this episode. And of course, Georgiou was able to overcome it. I mean, not suffering any pain at all. Even though he was making it slow and agonizing for her. And, well, one second, I'll be back. Alright. Alright, sorry about that, I'm back. But, anyways, Georgiou is tortured by this mustache-twirling villain. She even later tells one of his associates that he's going to end up getting him killed, which eventually does happen because Georgiou kills the guy later on, as Saru and Tilly basically try to survive and outwit and outsmart this villain and causing a bar fight. And he's given an ultimatum by Georgiou saying, leave here, come back, and she'll kill him. And of course, there's also another problem that we're made aware of in this episode. Other than problems I've already mentioned that I have with the episode. And that's the fact that there's a bacteria in this ice on this planet. The ice that the Discovery crashed into. And it eats away not only at flesh, but also at metals. So, they really have to speed things up and get Discovery back up into space. And, Saru gives Tilly an order to get back to the ship. And next we see, there's a scene after Stamets and Janet Reno, or Jet Reno, whatever, get a system online. Of course, Stamets shouldn't even be, on duty because he's still injured and he's still bleeding. But, they get the EPS system back online. And, of course, we next see Tilly on a communicator saying that everything's up and running. And everybody's back at their stations on the bridge. And they're trying to get Discovery off the planet and back into space so they can, make contact with Starfleet. Presumably. And, they're shaking, they're rocking, the ice is frozen over on Discovery. And instead of, having the helmsman, rotate the thrusters and, try to shake them loose, they're just trying to use all thrusters at once. And then there's a tractor beam locked onto Discovery. And, by that time, they're getting their tactical systems slowly back online, and the crew asks Saru, what do we do? And Saru says, open inhaling frequencies. And, because that's what any good Starfleet officer would do, regardless of the threat. You would open a channel and you would try to diplomatically get yourself out of this situation. And Saru does. And who is it? Mikey Spock. Mikey Spock and presumably Booker have come to save the day. And Mikey Spock's been looking for Discovery for over a year. For over a year, Mikey Spock has been waiting for any sign of Discovery in the vast reaches of the galaxy. What did I think of Far From Home? I thought it was a little bit better than, That Hope Is You, but not by much. There, were still things that bothered me, and the blood and guts on Star Trek, that's what bothers me. And I'll admit I'm not a big fan of horror films, but it's because I consider them laughable. And, I'm not afraid of, watching horror movies that depict blood and guts. But seeing it in Star Trek, a medium where it's so out of place, that bothers me. The fact that, the crew and other characters still speak like we do today, that bothers me. No, I don't mind diversity. That doesn't bother me. one way or another. And, you could be whatever you want to be. That doesn't bother me. But, at least, when it comes to Star Trek, at least respect what came before and, keep it family friendly, because that's what really, you know, that's what really helped when, you're looking at a show like Star Trek, was that it was family friendly. You could watch it with anybody in your family. Yeah, there might be only one person in your family who really enjoys it. The rest, they're just watching it for the sake of watching it because that member of the family watches it. And I'm also talking about the days where people maybe only had one TV in the living room, and if you were lucky, you had a TV in the master bedroom because that was your parents. And, Star Trek is all about hope, tolerance, and understanding. And with the way some of these officers, bark back at each other, you have an ensign barking back at a commanding officer. I'm sorry, but that wouldn't go. Even in today's military, that wouldn't go. So I don't know why the writers think, let's have the characters curse at each other and disrespect one another. That doesn't work. And for the record, for anyone that says, "Oh, you're just this, you're just that," I have cerebral palsy. And one of the episodes of Deep Space Nine, and it was a second season episode, and it was called Mira. It was about a character who was in Starfleet, who was recently assigned to DS9 out of the academy. And she was in a wheelchair. Now, story-wise, the reason why she was in a wheelchair was because of the gravity on her planet was just fine for her. She could walk. But the gravity, whether it be on Earth or, Starship, space station, the artificial gravity was just too much for her body. She wasn't able to walk in that type of environment, so she required a wheelchair. And of course, they made everything wheelchair accessible for her, for the most part. But one of the things that she didn't like was the fact that everybody, thought she couldn't do things for herself, when in fact she could, and she just wanted to be given the same respect as everyone else. She didn't want any special treatment. And I myself can identify with that I didn't want any special treatment. And, that's one of the things that I really liked about Star Trek, because Star Trek appeals to everyone. But when I watched Star Trek under Kurtzman, it's not appealing. Why am I continuing to watch it? Because, like I said earlier, I'm a Cub fan. And I was always hopeful and optimistic that one day, I would see the Cubs get to the World Series. That day occurred 4 years ago on this date. And that's a day I will never forget. Seeing the Cubs win the pennant for the first time in 71 years, get to the World Series, and then eventually win that World Series, their first World Series win since 1908. That is hope. That is optimism. The relenting pursuit, the hope, the optimism, and not wanting to see the optimism fade, because it seems like anymore optimism is fading because of the circumstances in the real world. And I look at, TV, movies, books, music as an escape for a little while from all things that are going on in the world. It's not like I'm ignoring what's going on in the world, but sometimes, with all the bad news, you just need a break from it, and you hope that, maybe some good news will slip in. And, to me, that is what Star Trek is about. Looking at the past, remembering the past, and trying to be better than what we once were. And hopefully one day, it's not going to happen in my lifetime probably, but one day, humanity will see that, and we will be far better off than we are today. There will no longer be any fighting amongst us. Because I can only say this for myself. I can't say it for you. You can only speak for you. But it has gotten old, all the fighting that's going on. Whether it be, you don't like this group, you don't like that group, you don't like this lifestyle, you don't like that lifestyle. We're all different. And for anybody who likes Kurtzman's, version of Trek, well then, enjoy it. But for me, I don't know. I've seen 2 seasons of Discovery plus 2 more episodes, and I don't know if I'm gonna see it. I'm hoping at some point I see it, because there's still a part of me that still has that spark of hope, optimism, that where I want to see it, but I don't know. I really don't know. And I know I've discussed it with a few people I know, and they're saying just give up, but I don't want to give up. I want to be able to find an episode or 2 or 3 that make me go, this show is turning it around. But I'm not seeing that right now. I'm not seeing it, and I don't know that I'll ever see it. I'm hoping I see it. I mean, like I said, I like Deep Space Nine from the beginning. A lot of people didn't like Deep Space Nine from the start. They didn't like it in the middle. They didn't like it when it ended. And then all of a sudden, some of those same people, not all, but some of those same people are now praising DS9 because it wasn't, episodic all the time. It had a story that you had to keep following, especially during the Dominion War. It was serialized. And, people are praising it now. Maybe now just isn't the time for me to be watching this version of Star Trek. But I'm going to continue to watch this version of Star Trek because of that hope. Hoping that I'm going to see an episode that I like. Because I'd even thought, and if you go back to my Mandalorian reviews, you'll see that I had planned to do reviews of the Orville, Star Trek Picard, and Star Trek Discovery, along with the Mandalorian. Well, until season 3 of the Orville starts, those reviews are on hold. Now, I could go back and give my perspective on season 1 and season 2, but I don't feel like going back and reviewing those episodes. And as far as Picard's concerned, I honestly can't sit through those 10 episodes one more time to review it. I'll go ahead and give my short and sweet answer here. In this review, as far as Picard's concerned, nah, same thing with Discovery. I don't like it. I don't like what they did with 7 and 9. I don't like the fact that they just treated Icheb like he was a throwaway character when actually he played, a key role in helping 7 and 9 in those later seasons when he came on board. And, Picard wasn't the Picard I last saw in Star Trek Nemesis. Picard shouldn't be going around the galaxy apologizing for everything that, he he had no control over. He had no control over, Mars, Utopia Planitia shipyards being destroyed. And, that brings me to another point. So I know this is turning into a Picard review as well. But you mean to tell me that an empire as vast as the Romulan Star Empire, knowing that their star was about to go nova, you mean to tell me, with their vast resources and vast amount of ships, they could have assembled a fleet and rescued most of the Romulans on Romulus, even recruit the Remans to do so? I don't buy it. And here's another thing, and you'll find this in one of the early episodes of Friday Night Frontiers. I even bring up this point. Of all the different designed ships that the Federation has, even those that were mothballed, you mean to tell me that Starfleet could have gotten those ships back up and running for this rescue mission, send out a hail to the Romulans saying, we've got a fleet of ships coming your way to assist in the evacuation. We're here to help. Because that's what Starfleet is. Starfleet wouldn't go, oh, okay, we lost our fleet here. Yeah, okay, pal, we're not able to help you right now. So, yeah, fuck off. Starfleet wouldn't do that. Starfleet would find any way possible to lend a hand. After all, these two fought side by side in the Dominion War. Yeah, I know. Cisco is the reason why the Romulans were brought into the Dominion War. But they fought side by side. Even without Cisco, the Romulans would have been the last remaining faction in the Alpha Quadrant standing between the Dominion, and they wouldn't have lasted long. You don't believe me? Watch Deep Space Nine when they bring, their names escape me at the moment, but basically they bring 4 different characters in who are augments like Dr. Bashir, who was also an augment like Khan. And, they're coming up with different scenarios and even saying that, the Federation does this, it won't survive. The Federation does this, yeah, they'll have to surrender, but people will survive, and eventually there will be a revolution, a revolt, and there will be freedom again. But, the Romulans eventually would have seen where things are going, non-aggression pact or not, and said, we got to defend ourselves. So, I just find it hard to believe that Starfleet would give up, that Picard would just go, well, I'm going back to my vineyard, and, screw you, Jewel on True, and all that. And I'm going to make wine, even though I detest having to make it. It was my brother and my nephew's thing. Robert and Renee burned to death in a fire. Did I ever tell you that? I know that's my poor Patrick Stewart impression, but that's how he sounds in Picard. Yes, I realize the man's supposed to be in his 90s. But, if you go around, there are many people who are, in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and they all don't sound like this. Not everybody of a certain age sounds like this, okay? All right? Damn kids. I know. So, Picard, I don't like it. And the small parts I did like, seeing the reunion between Picard, Commander Riker, or Captain Riker. After all, we knew he was captain of the Titan when he was leaving the Enterprise after Nemesis, and Deanna, they were both married. There's a wedding reception scene where you see Will Wheaton as Wesley Crusher in the wide shot, and he's not given a speaking line, at least in that cut. Now there is a deleted scene where he actually does have a few speaking lines, but anyways, Riker showed up at the end of Picard with a fleet of copy and paste ships instead of, again, the many different classes of ships Starfleet has. I can name several off the top of my head. You got a Saber class, you got an No Birth class, you got Nebula, Ambassador, Defiant, Galaxy class. You even have, a New Orleans class. Yes. New Orleans class was used, and best of both worlds, it was a kit bash ship that they slapped together with a few Enterprise models, and that being the Enterprise D. But anyways, you have other classes of Federation starships. You can get frigates, freighters. Heck, Cassidy Cisco Yates, she was a freighter captain. I'm sure she knows people who could have assisted, who would have been in the Sol system at the time, who would have been more than happy to lend a hand to Starfleet, even those who weren't in the vicinity of Starfleet, out there near the neutral zone, would have been happy to assist. But just like with Discovery and Picard, you don't get a lot of thinking like you've gotten before in Star Trek. You just get a lot of boom, 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 and that's it. That's it. And, they could have saved a lot of time in Picard by just saying, yeah, Picard died, but he had his consciousness transferred into an android body, so now he's an android. Because you bring back Brent Spiner as Data, and don't get me wrong, it was nice to see him back as Data, but, Data wanting to die, as far as I'm concerned, Data's last moments were in Nemesis, where he takes the portable transporter that Geordi gave him, and he puts it on Picard. Picard beams away off the scimitar and back onto the Enterprise, and Data takes the phaser, blows up the Theron generator, and the scimitar blows up, goes boom, and that's when Data blows up and goes boom, and an explosion of that magnitude, I'm sorry, there wouldn't be anything left of Data to recover and use to build new androids, and also Data's consciousness up until that moment. And, Bruce Maddox shows up in the series, and, well, Bruce Maddox was a waste. So that's another thing in Kurtzman Trek. You have characters that, what's their whole point of being there? Georgiou, or Giorgio, however you pronounce the name. And then, of course, you have not Bill Maddox, because it wasn't the same actor. I'm sure they didn't bring him back because of age or whatever stupid reason. And, he's not even there for even a full episode before they kill him. And, you've got, a doctor who assisted Maddox, but, she's a waste of space. You got 7 of 9, who's not really 7 of 9, because she left Starfleet after being, disillusioned or whatever kind of bullshit. What happened to her relationship with Chakotay? She had friends from Voyager. The Doctor comes to mind. Yeah, he was a hologram, but he had his mobile emitter from the 29th century, which gave him the ability to move about. And of course, last we knew, she and Chakotay were involved. What, did she come back to the Alpha Quadrant and say, sorry, Chakotay, I'm no longer interested since we're no longer stranded in the Delta Quadrant now. And, another person who we didn't see in the series, but it would have been nice to see him because maybe he would have finally gotten promoted past ensign, would have been Harry Kim. But, they brought back Hugh from My Borg. And also Descent Part 1 and Part 2. And they basically wasted his character. And, the two characters that were supposed to be Data's daughter, Soji and Dodge. I'm sorry, did anybody forget about Lal? Anybody? Because I sure as hell didn't. I didn't forget about the episode The Offspring from the 3rd season of Next Generation, where Data creates his android daughter, and she's able to process things and do things that Data cannot, and unfortunately it overloads her positronic net, and she eventually ends up shutting down. But I didn't forget about Lal, and we saw what remained of B4. I mean, what kind of name is that for an android? I know it's supposed to be a Zoombot, but anyways, we got B4, but we didn't get a single mention of Lore. I know he was disassembled and deactivated at the end of Descent Part 2, but still, if they wanted to base any android off of a Soon android, they could have used Lore. Now, maybe not give him his emotions and his personality, because we saw how that turned out a few times on Next Generation. But still, you would have been able to at least try to replicate Dr. Soon's work. But, another thing that bothered me was the fact that, Deanna and Riker had, two kids, a girl and a boy, and unfortunately their son, Thaddeus Riker, and we found out that during the Civil War, Commander Riker, because that's his rank at the time, the episode, I think it was Q-less in Voyager, and it's one where there's a Q that wants to commit suicide and end his life, and Q, played by John Delancey, shows up and says, "You can't do that, you're Q." But anyways, this Q helped the great-great-grandfather of Commander Riker, and that particular Riker was named Thaddeus Riker. So, Troy and Riker's son, his name was Thaddeus, which I did think was a nice nod. But, as far as the Federation not being able to come up with a cure to help their son with the disease he had, you had Dr. freaking Crusher you could have called. She could solve anything. And if there was one doctor from the Next Generation era that was able to solve anything, it was Dr. Beverly Crusher. Now there was a chief medical officer who was on board the Enterprise in Season 1, and then she becomes head of Starfleet Medical, so that's why she's not there during Season 2, even though there was behind-the-scenes reasons as to why she actually wasn't there. And, she returns to the Enterprise from Season 3 all the way to Season 7, so Gates McFadden was in 6 seasons of Next Gen, unlike the rest who were in 7, except for Denise Crosby, who would come back as her alternate timeline self, and, of course, Selah. But you mean to tell me that Dr. Crusher, perhaps even Dr. Bashir, because, he is genetically enhanced, so he was a brilliant doctor himself. After all, he came up with the cure for the changeling virus and helped cure not only Odo, but also the Founders. And that's what helped with the peace negotiations and ceasefire between the Alliance and the Dominion. You mean to tell me, with all the medical personnel available to them, even the doctor from Voyager, that nobody could come up with a cure? Again, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And Picard to me was pretty much a waste because it went against everything that Star Trek stands for. Nobody would be living in a trailer in the late 24th, early 25th century. Why? Because poverty has no meaning by Kirk's time, by Archer's time, by Picard's time. I mean, wealth. Go watch Star Trek 4. Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. There's a scene with Kirk and Gillian, and Kirk's telling her that there's no hunger, there's no poverty, and there is no war. There is no war. And nobody suffers. Heck, even in Time's Arrow Part 2, when Samuel Clemens is on board the Enterprise, Troy even tells him how things are like, not just on Earth, but throughout the United Federation of Planets. And Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain, he sees a bullion walk by, and he says, I'm sure that's what you told that blue fella back there before you took him into slavery. And, things like slavery don't exist. Discrimination in the Federation and on Earth in general no longer exist in the Star Trek universe by the 22nd, 23rd, 24th centuries. Heck, in First Contact, when the Borg time travel back in time, creating a time vortex, Riker says that's an ample opportunity for the Borg because there are very few governments left. There would be little resistance. And, that's after, the Third World War that occurs in Star Trek's timeline. It's a nuclear war, and that's why there are very few governments left, because very few people actually survive. There was even a nuclear winter mentioned in one episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. But, go ahead and call me a hater of this series. Kurtzman Trek, whether it be the 3 movies or, Discovery, Picard, even Lower Decks, which I didn't find very funny at all. And maybe it's just not my kind of humor. And anymore, I'm not even sure what my kind of humor is. But, this current version of Star Trek, it is not Star Trek I, look forward to watching each and every week, where, if there's a new episode occurring and, there's a Cub baseball game on, that I'd be flipping back and forth between the game and the episode just to see what's going on. I know it's not like that nowadays, because nowadays, especially with Star Trek, it's, on a streaming service behind a paywall, and, you can watch it anytime. But I can remember being with friends, playing baseball and saying, I gotta get home by 8 o'clock. I gotta get home by 9 o'clock on certain days. There's a new episode of Voyager, a new episode of Deep Space Nine coming on, and I want to be able to see it. And they would laugh. They would laugh because I wanted to watch the newest episode of Voyager, the newest episode of Deep Space Nine. And, it's because of the characters and the stories that were associated with those 2 series, that were associated with Next Generation, that are still associated with the original series, and to, an extent, love it or hate it, Enterprise. But, after watching these 2 episodes of Discovery, I am going to try to review the rest of the season. I'm going to be trying to do Pacific 414 episode review live every Thursday. Maybe not the same time every Thursday, but I'm going to try to do it live every Thursday because this is not the only show I'm going to be reviewing. Next Friday, we have the season premiere of The Mandalorian, and I'm looking forward to that because I really enjoy that show. Yes, it was only 8 episodes of the first season, but I'm looking to see where episode 2, well, season 2 that is, picks up where episode 8 left off of season 1, where we see Moff Gideon with the Darksabers. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that, what develops with that, and how they further develop the Mandalorian, the child story, Kara, and of course Grief Karga. I'm looking forward to getting back to that section of the Star Wars universe, and hopefully one of these days Discovery will hook me in. Although at this point, outlook not so good, but it'll be that way for Discovery, where I go, I can't wait to see that episode. But right now, I'm not feeling it. And I'm doing these episode reviews because I had already committed myself to doing these episode reviews. And I'm going to continue. So, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you didn't enjoy it, that's fine. You can leave a comment if you'd like. And you don't have to. You're more than welcome to do whatever you want. But if you'd like, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also give this video a thumbs up if you'd like. Subscribe to the channel. And that's it. So I am going to go ahead and wrap this up. As you can see, I'm just itching to wrap it up. I'm already running the credits. And I will see you next time. Oh, and by the way, before I officially depart, I do want to let you know that over on the Twitch channel tomorrow night at 9, I will be doing Friday Night Frontiers once again with my co-host TKO, live at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific, and we will be discussing all things Star Trek, and, anything that comes to mind pop culture wise while playing Star Trek Online. So, once again, I hope you all enjoyed this. Gives me a chance to say what's on my mind about these last couple episodes. And, if you didn't enjoy it, that's fine too. But if you want to have a discussion, let's have an open dialogue and have a civil discussion. And, we can give each other our points. We may agree on some points after opening this dialogue. We may still disagree, but let's just at least try to open some dialogue and have a civil conversation. Thank you, take care, and good night.